So, Wendy, to answer your question, this is still etching ink, but long story short, I don't expect you to remember this necessarily, but just to save money, because inks are very expensive, I buy colored etching inks and black and white relief inks. So all our colored inks should be etching, which means in order to use them for relief, you just add the burnt plate oil. But for etching or monotype, you may or may not need to use the oil. So a couple other things that we need, and it's going to be a little difficult because the chemical that's in this, and it's not really a chemical, it's essentially like shortening, bleaches out the label. But this is what's called set swell. So set, S, well. So set swell. You need some set swell compound, and it's basically like a fat. And when you open it up, if it looks like shortening or it looks like lard or something like that, you just need like maybe half of a knife. And then no ink gets inside of that. And then the other thing we need is Easy Wipe compound. And I just love that I get to tell everybody that you need something called Easy Wipe. What do you think Easy Wipe does? Makes it easy to wipe. So let me ask you, just in your imagination, if we took this ink and we smeared it on a piece of plastic, do you think it would clean off easily without a solvent? Like if you just used a Q-tip and tried to clean it off, would it clean off easily or difficult? Probably difficult. Smear everywhere and stuff. Yeah. So what we want to do is we want to modify our inks so that they stick to our plastic film, but that they wipe off easily. And so that's where Easy Wipe comes in. And as with any printmaking class, mine or anybody else's, if the inks sit around for a while, you'll get ink goobers. So we'll just want to throw those away. And so this stuff looks different. This stuff looks like butterscotch pudding, I don't know, something gross. This, to start with, we'll take also half a knife. And I know my bakers and my science folks, they want exact measurements. It's all experimentation, but I would say we're talking maybe to a puddle of ink, maybe a quarter set swell, like a quarter of the size, and maybe no more than half the size of the Easy Wipe. And so we want to mix those together, and so I'm going to take, for a puddle like this big, I'm going to take, say, just like a quarter of a knife, take a quarter or half of this Easy Wipe, and let's just test it real quick. So if I stick my knife down and I pull it, notice how it's sticking. It's like one long continuous string of ink. Yeah, and it's still going. It's still, I mean, you could even draw with it. In fact, you could draw with this for your monotype. That could be really cool. I just patented that. All right, yeah. So what we want to do is we want to change the makeup of the ink. So I'm going to scoop these together. And by the way, put a little star. The Easy Wipe, just don't put a star here or anything. I'll tell you why. I don't want to confuse you. If we were using oil-based inks for our intaglio, you would use these same chemicals, or same additives, but we're going to use water-based inks for our intaglio. Clean up with soap and water.
Did you say what the swell did exactly?
Well, I'm going to show you right now. So, notice how now it just breaks. So we know that's changing our ink for the better. So set swell does a couple things. It allows, especially if you're going to do multiple colors, for the inks to kind of not mix together as much as sit on top of one another. So it acts like as a waxy sort of barrier. But it also helps cut down the viscosity. The Easy Wipe cuts down the viscosity and makes it very, very easy to wipe. And so we could even test that if we took a knife and we did a quick drawdown on this glass. And why don't we just take this knife, clean it off, grab a little bit of pure ink, and do a drawdown here. I mean, obviously it wouldn't even slide down as much. If I take a Q-tip and I try to rub this through, it's just sort of smearing it around. It's not cutting through to the glass. But if I take a Q-tip here, I can cut right through it. So it's allowing us to remove ink. So, because there's 3 types of monotypes that you can do, and the first one I'm going to show you is related to the second. First one is going to be called trace monotype. Now we have these styrene plates. They may look kind of ugly. They're stained, but they should be perfectly clean. If you really wanted to clean them up with some gloves, you're welcome to. Some people like to tape their borders for this first step. For this demo, I'm just going to kind of attack it because I want to give you a lot of time in class to work on this or the relief. But if you were to tape your border, don't forget to peel the tape back up, because some people want like a nice even border. They leave their tape on, and they're like, where's my nice even border? It's because the tape didn't come up. So seems obvious, but it'll happen. All right, so start, charge our fountain. It's going to probably sound and look a little different than relief, whereas relief had that nice hiss. This may or may not have the same hiss. I'm going to try to put it on a little thicker, so it's almost like orange peel now. It's all kind of up to you. But because the roller, like this roller obviously has maybe a little flat spot or maybe even a little mineral spirits on it from the last time it was cleaned, you have to build this ink up in a few layers, just like you would with your relief block. And the slower, the more you add, the faster, the more you remove. But now, since we're using a clear piece of plastic, we can actually hold it up. So right there, I have to go more. You see all the little squares that aren't full enough? So one of the cool things about using this clear plastic, as you probably saw on the Arts Mia videos, is that you can put your design underneath it now. So you could trace right through it. We have a light box over there, or you could hold it up to a window, or you could just sort of freestyle it. The medium is extremely conducive to free-form, improvisational sort of art making, not necessarily overthinking it, kind of doing some different effects. I would say, other than this spot, we're looking pretty good. And then, of course, the ink, depending on the color you use, is more or less transparent. So we do have some additives where we could make it more transparent. Like this, I'm not going to be able to necessarily see through this if I wanted to trace like my design, maybe through a light table. All right, so the first step is, today I don't need your imagination because I actually brought some of the student grade relief paper to print on. But what you might do is either take demonstrate this the right way. An extra piece of good printing paper, determine which side you want to print on, I think the rough side, and I'm going to gently set this down on the ink film, but I'm not going to put it to bed. I'm not going to push it or smear it or anything like that, because then what this will allow me to do is what's called a trace monotype. And so if I had a design that I wanted to use, I could now set this on top, or a photocopy of my design, or just anything at all. Now, using a pencil or a pen, so I'm going to use a cover sheet just because I don't want ink on the back of my paper, I could now start to draw anything I wanted. I could even try just rubbing my fingers through here. I could try the back of a brush. I could try drawing a little design. So on and so forth. And what happens is you have now created what's called a trace monotype. And so I had a student a few quarters ago do the entire tarot book of trace monotypes. And so it's not like,
really cool.
that's a pretty fine point pen that I used. This was my fingertip. But you notice part of the unique look of this is that you get all that extra texture of ink coming up, because the paper is kissing that ink film, so you're going to get a little bit of sort of accidental mark making. But I think that's part of the beauty about it. And you can do cross hatching or anything like that. That's where I drug my fingers through, so you can create all sorts of different types of effects. And you got two things. You almost have a bonus piece of art. This is your trace monotype, but maybe this is bonus, because what you've also done now is you've imparted your design onto the plate. So now what you could do is work subtractively. And the way we would do that is you could come in with Q-tips, and we use the real Q-tip brand Q-tip for a couple reasons. They use paper stocks instead of plastic, so you can break them or cut them in half, and then further get like line work done using that absorbent stick. So it's like that. And obviously the cotton swab end allows you to then not just remove ink, but maybe work tonally. So push ink around, open up areas. My suggestion is, even though you're gonna throw a lot of these Q-tips away, maybe you keep a few dirty ones nearby because you might wanna add ink back. So subtractive, you can do all sorts of different mark makings with Q-tips. You could try using brushes, but the brushes are going to load up really quick, so that might take some experimenting. People will often use their, can you see through that? People use fingertips. So the artist Chuck Close actually did a whole portrait using his fingerprints to create almost like a reverse stamp pad to create tonality in the monotype. And you can also take things like paper or foil or fabric or anything that's not going to permanently damage this plate. And impart all kinds of like marble textures. So if you wanted to build like a landscape, you could put rocks and cracks in your landscape by just folding up paper. You can take paper towels, and I know those probably aren't full, so I'll just reuse this and open up large areas. That, maybe more. You can keep taking stuff off. If you come over here, someone please grab me some paper towels. You could grab some mineral spirits and a clean Q-tip. You pour it into anything metal or ceramic. I would not pour mineral spirits into a plastic cup because it will eat through the plastic. But you could play with dropping some solvent right onto the ink film. And that might take a couple experiments. You might want to actually take that, let it sit for a little bit, and then maybe blot it with something so the solvent soaks in. But now we have some different textures. And obviously I'm just attacking this really quick. I'm not